Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Legends of Zegan. I'm so happy to be here with one of my special guests today. I can't wait to introduce you all to my great friend, Izzy. Izzy, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you? I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. I'm doing fantastic. I am so pleased about this episode because we have a lot to dive into. Now, everybody's going to ask, what makes Izzy a legend? And so Izzy is a morning radio show host for 93.3 Alt AZ.
Correct.
Alt
AZ 93.3. Either way you say it, it's all the same.
Perfect. Thank you. And you're a radio host. You've been doing that for a few years.
Yeah, 13 years that I've been in radio now.
I find that fascinating.
It's a long time.
That's one of the reasons I have you on the show today, because I think that is very cool. You have kind of carved this path into becoming a DJ radio host, which I think a lot of people would love to be able to do, have no idea how to do it, might be scared to do it. So we're going to talk about that. But then also you are now forging a path into becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a voice actor, which I'm very excited to dive into.
Yeah, very exciting stuff, but terrifying to start your own business, man. Let me just tell you.
It's not for the faint of heart.
No.
It is really not. And that's something that we've been able to capture on the show for sure, is being able to identify what makes somebody a great entrepreneur. And I think you're going to have some really great words of wisdom to share with us.
Thank
and then also wanted to cover some of the things that you're doing to kind of give back to the community as well, with your help in finding foster homes for pets, which I think is amazing.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
we have a lot to get into today, but Izzy, you are 100% legend, and I'm so happy you're here. Let's dig into this. So you are a DJ host for a radio station here in Arizona, and you started 13 years ago.
Yes.
How did you get into this?
It's funny. Most people are like, I always dreamed of being a radio host.
Right.
I never dreamed of it. I am somebody who likes to be behind the scenes, believe it or not. And I got into college to go for psychology because I wanted to work with serial killers in prison. That was my original job. That was my dream job.
Okay.
And then I fell into radio at a college radio station there. I was working at a sandwich shop, and another student came in, and he happened to work there. And he was telling me about it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And he was like, we're doing like an open casting next week if you want to come and audition. And I was like, oh, no. No, I do not. That's not something that I would want to do. Like, I would never be on the radio. And I went back and told my college roommate, and she was like, I did it in high school. You have to do it. I'll go with you. So we both auditioned, and I ended up getting the job, which was unpaid, by the way. But this radio station is called WPGU, and it's in Champaign, Illinois. And it is known in the industry as being like a boot camp for radio. So it's not university funded, and it's completely student run. So you as a student had to learn how to do commercial radio, like competitive commercial radio, as like a 19-year-old. So it was insane, but it was so much fun, and it was an alternative station. After doing it for 2 years, I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. I don't want to do psychology anymore. So I still graduated with my psych degree, but then I quickly moved on to a new job in Springfield, Illinois, where I was doing top 40 nights for a year and a half.
Wow.
And then just kept on with my career after that.
That's incredible. So you really just fell into it.
I did.
How long did it take you to you have a really great voice.
Thank you.
And that just covers such a myriad of things, but certainly a great voice for radio. And I want to understand, was that something that you had to, like, was that part of the audition process when you went in to do this radio station? Was that something in the back of your mind, like, oh, I need to sound like a radio DJ?
Not at all, no.
Okay.
Because even in the audition, they didn't have us get on a mic and pretend to be a radio person. They were just asking us questions like, if you could be a tree, what tree would you be? Like, it was just the most ridiculous stuff that you could possibly answer. So I think they were just looking for personality. They were just looking for interesting answers, which honestly was genius if you're really thinking about
That's
it.
Smart.
Because the last thing that matters on the radio is what you sound like.
Interesting.
Believe it or not.
Sure. I think that may be a big misconception because when I think about radio hosts, I do think about very iconic voices, Casey Kasem, and I could name a whole bunch. I'm not going to do that, but it is interesting because I feel like, and you have ironically a really great voice for radio.
Thank you.
Which has now turned into something that you're leveraging for voice acting, which we'll definitely get into. But it wasn't something that you had really necessarily needed to have to get into radio. Then
Not
it
at all.
sounds like. Okay.
Not at all. And there are plenty of people on radio that have voices that, in my opinion, are hard to listen to,
Sure.
but they still have jobs and
Yes.
like they still do well because they have the personality.
Right. Okay. I love that. And what for you is, for somebody who maybe is interested in getting into it, what would you say are some of the amazing things about being a radio host?
Oh, so many.
Sure.
You get to come to work every day and get paid to talk about your life. You get to come in every day and get paid to make fun of yourself. Like, it is so much fun in these companies. It's not corporate at all, even if you're working for a corporate company. I mean, you walk into a radio building and it's just fun. There's no professionalism, which can be problematic at times, don't get me wrong. But it's just such a fun environment to be in. All the people that you work with are fun people, and everybody has interesting stories, and you're just meeting so many different people. The listeners are what make it the best, though. Hearing their stories every day and getting to connect with them. When you're out and people are like, oh my God, I listen to you every day. It's like, what? Because you're not thinking that in your head. You're thinking, maybe a couple people listen.
Sure.
Like, people in radio tend to have like low self-esteem. Like, we're looking for acceptance. That's why we're on the radio. So when people tell you that, it's like, oh my God, maybe I am making an impact.
That's
And
very cool.
when you notice that you can, and you can like kind of affect people in the way that they think and feel about things, it's magic, man. It's such a cool job to get to do.
I love that. I think that's very cool. Well, and especially too, when you're just sitting inside of a studio,
Mm-hmm.
you're not able to really see
No.
all the people that are out there listening, right? And so you're just in this box producing something that you have no idea what the feedback is going to be from your listeners, from the audience out there.
Yeah.
But the fact that people come up to you, they know you, they recognize you, that's super cool.
Yeah.
I think that's very, I don't know, it's kind of gratifying in a way, because you're able to provide so much to so many people, right?
Totally.
Especially those people who are listening loyally every single day, and it's part of their routine, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's very cool.
That's a good way of putting it.
Now, on the flip side, what would you say are some of the pitfalls of going into radio?
Well, I guess I'll start with the obvious thing that people always say is you do it because you love it. You don't do it for the money.
Okay.
I mean, obviously you can fight for yourself when it comes to making money, and you can make more, but you know, that's probably one of the biggest drawbacks that people always say. Aside from that, I don't know. I mean, it can be a tough industry. It really can. It's the entertainment industry.
Right.
You're putting yourself out there for people to judge you. And it always happens.
Sure.
Especially if you go to a brand new station, especially if you're taking over from a morning show that had been there forever. I've done that multiple times. You are dealing with so much backlash because people don't want to get to know you. They like what's familiar. And if
Sure.
you're taking over that, they're not going to like you at first. So you kind of have to learn how to have thick skin, but also realize that you can't take it personally. Because if you're super sensitive about stuff like that, this might not be the best industry for you, because you just have to understand that people just like what they like. And if that's not you, that's okay.
Sure.
Like, that's totally okay. They can go listen to another station. That's no big deal. You will find the people that love listening to you and build your listener base that way. You just have to have confidence in yourself.
I love that. I think that's great. I think you really hit the nail on the head as far as people who maybe are interested in it and thinking about the fact, like, oh, you know, I think I can do all these amazing things as part of being, you know, a radio host, but not necessarily thinking about some of the negative aspects, right? And I think that's very poignant in that you are taking over, you're reintroducing yourself. You are trying to show yourself off to the world, right? Not showing yourself off, but trying to showcase yourself to people, to get them obviously to tune into the radio station, because it's a revenue generating thing. And so of course you need to be almost like a ninja salesperson in getting more listeners to come in and be a part of this. So that's very fascinating. Okay. Now, as part of one of the things that I think is very cool is, and depending on the station that you work for, but you have an opportunity to meet some interesting people.
Oh, yeah.
Celebrities.
Yes.
Interesting audience members and stuff like that. But for you, do you have any cool stories about anybody interesting that you've met?
Ooh, two of my favorite interviews were probably two of my biggest. One of them was with David Draymond, who's the lead singer of Disturbed. And I got to interview him one-on-one in person at this this huge rock festival called Aftershock that happens in Sacramento every year. And he was just such a nice, just honest and just such a kind human. And I guess growing up listening to Disturbed, because like I was an emo kid.
Yes.
I don't know. You hear that kind of music and you just think like, oh, they're probably just going to be like, maybe like a little rough around the edges. But he's like a dad, and he was just so sweet and kind. And like we talked about gaming and stuff, because I grew up gaming and he grew up gaming, and like just connecting with him just felt so cool. And it just made me love Disturbed even more. And then my favorite interview ever was with Slipknot's Corey Taylor. And I got to interview him alone in his trailer. And I was the biggest Slipknot fan growing up. That was the CD my parents would always take away from me. They were like, no, you can't listen to this. Like, it's awful. And like, I would just go out and buy another one and just keep to hide it from him. And it was such a cool interview to do with him, because he's very well spoken. And he's one of those guys that like takes no nonsense. But when you really just sit down with him and have a conversation, it was so much fun. And I just felt grateful that he even allowed me to be there. Like, he's Corey Taylor. He doesn't have to do interviews anymore.
Right.
So
right.
It was just such a cool experience to be able to sit down with somebody that I grew up like idolizing. And then I got to see Slipknot perform that same day later on for the first time in my life, and I cried.
Wow.
I was literally in the crowd crying. Like, it was like
this
my
is
dreams
my life.
realized. Yeah.
That's so cool.
It was cool. So you do get to meet a lot of really interesting people.
Sure. I think that's very neat, because you obviously, I mean, are trying to hold back in fangirling.
Yeah, of course.
But were you able to, like, had you developed questions and
always.
thought about, I mean, you probably knew this interview was coming for quite a while.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So do you feel like you did a really good job with the interview?
I do. Yeah. I
Okay.
definitely did the best with what I had at the time. You know, this was probably like 5-6 years ago. And yeah, I came with a huge list of questions. But the thing with interviews is you want them to kind of happen naturally. So sometimes you throw the questions away and you just have a conversation.
Yes.
And it works out better. So you really just kind of have to gauge how it's going and what they're willing to talk about and what they're not.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow. And the fact that it was your most favorite band, right, growing up, and,
so cool.
and the fact that you get to sit across from this, this famous person who you would never probably run into, maybe at the airport or something, but quick ask for a selfie, but not to actually sit down and really introduce and understand what they're all about, which I think is cool. So now, from a radio perspective, you're doing a morning show, and so what's that like? What's the process like? Walk me through just a really high level day in the life of Izzy at the radio show.
Oh, it's so fun. Very relaxed. I start my day with breath work, because I'm like, gotta go in, gotta feel energized, because at 6 a.m. I'm live and I have to like entertain. And that's hard when you wake up at 4:30 in the morning. So I get to work. I set my stuff up. I make sure that everything's segged in terms of music and traffic and things like that. And I kind of get everything just ready for the day. And then I open the mic around like maybe 6:05, just kind of give a little introduction break. My main segment on the show is called Blow My Mind, and it goes for the entire show, starting at like 7:11 all the way till like 9:45. So I'll basically just give a topic of a day, which is what a lot of radio stations do. And like, for instance, today was like, what's your Halloween tradition? Or have you ever had a paranormal experience? Those stories are super cool. Or, what was your worst breakup? Anything like that. People can call in all morning. So all morning, I'm getting so many calls back to back to back. Not only am I taking the calls, but then I have to edit all of the calls. And sometimes people will talk for like 5-10 minutes.
Sure.
And I have to edit it down to like 2 to play it on the air.
Sure.
So a lot of my morning is talking to listeners, editing phone calls, playing them on the air, getting more calls. And it's just kind of that rhythm the entire show.
Wow.
Which is nice, because it gets very comfortable, and after doing it for like 20 minutes, it's like, okay, I'm in the groove. Give away some tickets, stuff like that, with some fun games, but it's pretty much it. I mean, the listeners really do all the work by telling me all of their stories, and all I have to do is just edit it and put it on the air. So it's a really fun job to do every day.
It seems like it is such a fun job. When you listen, and it's part of being the personality, right?
Yeah.
Is providing that energy. You said you talked about doing breath work and just amping yourself up.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you have a bad day?
Oh my God, all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I'm very honest about it on the air. I think that's one thing that more talent needs to do, is be honest about how you're feeling that day because it's relatable. Sometimes I'm like super depressed and I'll come in and just be like, yeah, I'm not having the best day today, but we're going to make it better, and people can relate to that and be like, yeah, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today too. And like, that sucks. But you know what? You're right. We are going to make it a good day because like, that's up to us. So I love to be honest about how I'm genuinely feeling every day because I just think people, they feel it too.
Sure.
And if I went in every day and was like, everything's sunshine and roses, like that's a lie. And people are not going to think
they're
that's
going to
authentic.
see right through
Exactly.
that. Yeah, sure. I love that. I love the idea to be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's definitely something that's certainly hard to find these days with social media and stuff. But you're very true to yourself and true to your listeners too as well, right?
Yeah.
I think the authenticity is definitely going to shine through and people can, like you said, relate to that. So
yeah,
that's
and
very
I
cool.
got to give my listeners the credit, honestly, because I've never worked at a station before where I felt like I could 100% wholly be my weird ass self, and they love it, and they make me feel so accepted and loved every day, and I just have to give them the credit for that, because if they didn't make me feel that way, I probably wouldn't be as weird as I am on the air. So thanks to them.
I love that. Then you're giving credit to your listeners, right? Because I think that they obviously are propping you up to give you this platform to be able to
100%.
do what you're doing. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Now, have you met a lot of your fans in person? Do you do events outside of the station?
Yeah, we do. And I've met quite a few. I should probably be going to more events, but sometimes they're just happening in the middle of the day when I have other stuff going on.
Sure.
But yeah, people will come up to me and be like, hey, I'm so-and-so. And I'll be like, oh my God, I recognize your voice. And it's crazy because I deal with the same thing that they do. Like a lot of times they'll be like, oh, it's so weird to hear your voice and like see you in person. Like I didn't know you looked like this. And I feel the same way about listeners. And there are plenty of listeners that call in all the time.
Sure.
Like we have our main listeners that always call every day. But then there are brand new listeners all the time too that'll call in and be like, yeah, I just moved here, found the station. It's super cool. So it's like when you meet these people after hearing their voice so many times and then you see what they look like, it's kind of hard to like put the two together.
Sure.
But it's also cool because it's like, wow, you're real. Like you're a real tangible human being that listens to my show.
Yes,
like,
just not a voice over the phone that you've been talking to them for, maybe months or years.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very cool. Now, I wanted to understand a little bit more about your speech craft, your ability to just jump on the show every day. Do you have much control over the segment? You said you're doing Blow My Mind segment. Was this something that you created, that you brought to the station manager, production manager? I'm just arbitrarily throwing out names of people that work at a radio station.
You're so close.
But how does the process work?
Yeah, so it was all up to me, which was nice. Every morning show I'd ever done, I had co-hosts. So you kind of had to share everything. You didn't always get to do everything you wanted to do because they might not agree or think it's funny or whatever. So having my own show, which is very rare for mornings, has been so nice because it's just given me the freedom to do what I think works. And I'm not going to lie, at first my boss even told me, he's like, I don't know about this Blow My Mind thing. I don't think it's going to be that great. And it blew up pretty quickly. But I brought the idea, which was a little different. I think I was like, it wasn't originally going to be a topic of the show. It was just going to be like, hey, here's, a topic and a couple people will call in to win a pair of tickets and we'll have listeners vote on who had the best story and they'll win. But I brought that to my consultant, Mike Stern, who's a very good friend of mine. And he was actually my consultant the first time I ever did morning radio, like 10 years ago. So we have a very close relationship. He knows me very well. He taught me everything I know. So I brought it to him and he brought up the idea of making it a show-long thing. And I was like, I kind of love that. And Dustin, who also does afternoons, he schedules a lot of the music and stuff on our station. And he was also in that meeting and he's like, okay, let's give it a go. And I just kind of launched it, not really knowing what I was doing, and it ended up being really great. So
that's super cool.
All me and Mike and Dustin tweaking it a little bit to make sure that it could be something that would really work, and it did. So I can't take all the credit, but it was just a cool thing to be able to bring up and have people be like, yeah, let's do that,
That's amazing. Now, one of the things, at least with most jobs, is you sometimes take it home with you,
Yeah.
right? Whether mentally or there's, physically paperwork or things that you need to do to, prepare for the next day. Is that same with radio?
100%. It's a 24/7 job. I mean,
Okay.
random things will happen to me and I'll open my phone and write it in the notes so that I can talk about it on the show. I'll have a funny thought or make a funny observation or something, or hear a random question and think, oh, that's interesting. I could use that as a blow my mind topic one day. So like I am constantly fishing in my everyday life to figure out other things that I can use on my show. So radio is not one of those things where you like do your 4 and hit the door. Like, yeah, you may be out of there after 4 hours, but you still are doing so much research throughout the day, just trying to figure out what else you can bring to the show to make it more relatable.
Interesting. Okay, so that is okay. I was not sure if it was all improv, right? Improvisation, which I'm sure some of it is.
Absolutely, yes.
But you do try to create yourself a structure just to, I guess, preparation is key in being successful in anything, right?
100%.
And so I found that to be a big growth period for me is trying to be more prepared in things, even with like podcasting, right? Okay, I'm going to think about ideas of, what to ask, right, in interviews. And I think that that's been super helpful in just being prepared. But I love that you're out there in the real world. You're almost like a comedian, right? Where you're just taking all these elements in your life, writing them down in your joke book, and then using them to create your set. And I do want to ask, because you are a very funny person.
Oh, thank you.
Have you ever considered doing any stand-up?
Absolutely not. No. Are you kidding me? No.
Okay.
I don't want to be on stage in front of people. Like, there's a reason I like radio. I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to be on stage. Even stage announcements. I play it off really well, but when I'm on stage and there are thousands of people staring at me and I have to hype them up, I'm like, I'm so anxious. Like, I try to blur out the crowd so that I can't see anybody's face, because if there's one person that looks upset, I'm going to focus on that one person. But no, I could never do comedy. I give so much credit to people that can do that, because that really is instant gratification, or the opposite.
Right.
And I don't think I'm strong enough to be able to handle if people didn't laugh at my jokes. So I prefer to just say it on the air, turn my mic off, and then go about my day and forget I said anything, because I don't want to think if people enjoyed it or not.
Yes,
like,
sure.
That would destroy my show.
Sure. That's funny. I was curious because you speak so well. You're a great orator, and I think that you would do well in stand up. But of course, there's a lot of anxiety that comes with public speaking. You mentioned something that I find interesting, and I want to know, because this ties into the question I asked about, do you take stuff home with you? Have you ever said something on the air and actually thought about it in the back of your mind, like, oh man, I said that and I wished I hadn't said that? And you think about it days, years later. And it even goes in like personal situations where you're out in the grocery store and you say something to somebody and you're like, they're like, hey, have a good day. And you're like, oh, thanks. Or what's the way? It's like,
oh, when people say like, have a nice day, or like, enjoy your food or something.
Yeah, enjoy
and
your
then
food.
You're like, you too.
You too, yes.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But do you ever have those moments, or do you just kind of like, I said it and it's done, and it's almost like a no take backs?
No, imposter syndrome all the way over here. Are you kidding me? So yes, all the time I say stuff and I get off the air and I'm like, oh my God. But usually I'll catch myself when I do say something that sounds weird, or maybe it didn't come out the way that I intended it to. And I'll usually bring that up in the break just to like poke fun at it or something, or be like, yeah, my brain's mush today, or like whatever, like just to make it obvious that I am aware that, that wasn't the best, but I'm human. And I think part of being a radio personality, especially nowadays because they're so talent focused on personality, is being authentic like that. Like, if I went on the mic every day and was just perfect, that's not realistic. So yeah, I'm going to say dumb stuff sometimes. Like, this job is my life, So yeah, you just kind of have to make fun of yourself and move on. I like that. Don't take yourself too seriously then. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I'm fascinated by just this entire career and the fact that you've made it. You've been extremely successful doing it. Thank you.
And now I want to understand for you, and is this something that you can see yourself doing until you are, retired?
I don't know. Possibly. I want to say yes, I do. I think the industry needs to change a lot in order to kind of keep me on board. But I will say the station that I'm at right now is probably my favorite station I've ever worked at. And it would probably be the last station I would ever want to work at, if I'm being honest. I don't know if I could find another alternative station in the country that I just get along with the people that I work with so well and love the environment that I work in. So if I am going to do it until I retire, well, it's going to be at Alt AZ.
I love that. And are you passionate? Because when you decided to, take this job with Alt AZ,
Yeah.
for somebody wanting to get into radio, and of course they're probably just going to take whatever gig they can potentially get,
Sure.
but does the actual the music genre, the style of music that this radio is playing, is that an important factor?
To me, it is.
Yes.
Like I had mentioned before, I did top 40 when I first started.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a top 40 girl. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy some top 40. Like I'll listen to the new Justin Bieber. Like his R&B album was really good.
Right.
And like, sure, I might enjoy a Taylor Swift song here and there. But like, that just wasn't, I didn't resonate with that music well enough to do well on the air on that station, if I'm being honest.
Sure.
They could have hired somebody different. I was very edgy and brash back then, which was not exactly what they were looking for on a top 40 station. And my boss had a lot of conversations with me about complaints that we got. But in radio, you also are told, if you're not getting complaints, you're not doing something right.
Oh,
so
okay.
You kind of want to push the envelope. I will say, though, if you can find a genre you're passionate about, you're going to do better because you want to learn about these bands and you want to stay in the know with that genre. So I would say if you can, definitely go into a format that you know well or at least like. Even if you don't know a lot about it, that's okay. Like you can learn that stuff. That's easy. If you have to take a job in a genre that you don't really love just to get experience, okay, do it. Just do your best to still learn about that format and the artists and things going on in their personal lives. You kind of have to delve into that fangirl or fanboy and just like follow their social medias and everything and just really get in the know. But once you get to a point where you can pick and choose something you love, choose something you're passionate about because it'll show and the listeners will relate to that, obviously.
Yes. Well said. Well,
Thank
clip
you.
that. That's definitely that's going on the reels. So when it comes to, I guess, progression in the career, right? Is it natural to kind of progress out of becoming or being a host and going into more of the, I guess, the operational side of a station where you're kind of, I don't want to say climbing the ladder, but I kind of mean climbing the ladder, right? Where you go from being a host into, again, I'm just throwing arbitrary names out there, station manager, production manager, whatever it is, right? Director,
Yeah.
manager.
You don't typically see it.
Okay.
However, I will say I'm in a much larger market now. All the markets that I was in before this, besides Vegas, I guess, we all wore a million hats.
Yeah, okay.
Medium and small markets, you are going to do every single job there because they just don't have the money to hire a whole team. So when I was in Fresno, I was mornings, middays. I did the local new music show on weekends. I was the AP assistant to the program director. So I did anything that my program director needed me to do. I did everything for our website. I did everything for like interviews and stuff. I was the point person for all of that. Like you had to learn so much. Of course you're learning editing. You have to learn editing to be on the radio. So sometimes you are doing production. You are doing commercials and putting a bed under it with some sound effects. So in the smaller and medium markets, you have to do everything. You still don't really see people like move on to be a production manager or something. If they're on air, they're typically on air because they want to be. But the bigger markets that you get to, like Vegas and here, all I ever had to worry about was just doing on air, which I got to say was such a nice change.
That's very nice. Yes.
Such a nice
just
change.
Stay in the lane.
Yes, I could just focus on one thing, which
Mhm.
meant my show was awesome,
Sure,
you know, because
sure.
I didn't have all these other things that I had to do at the end of it.
Sure. But you learned a lot of skills, obviously, along the
Absolutely.
way. So
And those are so useful. I mean,
Right.
and I love knowing those skills. Like it made me who I am today. I feel confident in those skills, you know?
I love that. No, that's super cool. I just was curious if there is just kind of this natural progression of moving outside of being a personality. But it's almost like you have created this
Right.
this being, this person, this personality, and that's kind of what people know you for.
Yeah.
And so to kind of remove that and go into being more operational, the passion might not be there.
Exactly,
As well.
yeah.
So okay, got it. All right. Just for anybody out there curious about the process of being in radio and what that progression looks like. You can really kind of carve your own path depending on what you want to do
Totally.
with it? Okay.
Yeah, just find a mentor. That's always my biggest advice. Find a mentor. Like if you get into a tiny radio station, I guarantee there's going to be people in that station that have worked there for probably 50 years or maybe 20. I don't know. Ask them to teach you things. Like you need to find people to teach you things. Otherwise, you're not going to learn. And that is so important. And don't be afraid to ask people to teach you things. Some people may be like, no, I don't want to teach you anything because it's my job and I don't want you to take it. But like other people will totally be down to teach you stuff. They'll be super excited. And you have to learn that stuff in order to keep growing your career in radio.
Yes. Well, and you've kind of reached that point now with your experience.
Yeah.
Have you been a mentor? Have people asked you? Are you open to being that person?
Totally, yeah. In Fresno, I actually got a few people jobs. I not only mentored them and taught them how to be on air, but I also got them jobs, which was cool. Like that felt very fulfilling because I was like, oh, I did a good job. But I was, doing that for free. I would come in on the weekend and be like, meet me at the studio. I'll give you a fake music log that I came up with. You go in there, you do your breaks, come back. I'll do an air check with you. So we'll listen to them together and I'll give you honest feedback. But, I would feed them stuff, like make sure if it's, after a band that is, has a show coming up, that you're talking about that show coming up. Like you just have to be in the know about everything and you have to be strategic about when you talk about things and where you talk about things. So yeah, I honestly really love mentoring. And I think that's one thing that this industry is missing is you don't have any like radio coaches. That's not a thing. So a lot of times people will just message me on Instagram and be like, hey, Izzy, I've always wanted to get into radio, but I have no idea what I'm doing. Like some people say to get into promotions and start from the ground up. And I think that was more the case back in the day. That progression doesn't happen really anymore, which is sad because I know a lot of people that still go into promotions thinking that they'll get on air. But what you really need to do is practice on air.
Sure.
And even if you're not at a station, but you're just making fake breaks and I can make a demo for you, then you can apply to all these jobs and go get a real radio job. So I'm always down to help people. I've considered starting my own like coaching business for radio because there isn't one. But that's something that would take a long time to start and I would have to work out the kinks. But it's something that I really love to do. I love sharing my knowledge about this industry because I've seen it all. I've been at so many stations, all different companies for years and years. I've seen it all. So I feel very confident that I can teach people how to be good on the air, how to be themselves on the air.
I love that. And I would certainly encourage you, especially if there's a need there in the market to provide that. And it sounds like there's a lot of people interested in doing that. And certainly radio, you have a lot of experience in that, but the ability to sit down, like we're doing a podcast, right? A lot of that translates into, podcasting as well. And especially with video and doing the editing, marketing yourself as a podcaster. I mean, there's so many different elements. I think you would be really successful in sharing that because you're funny, you're very personable. I think people would pay money to get advice from you. So
well, damn, I guess I got another side hustle now. I got to start.
Yes. And a great segue because I definitely want to talk about another thing that I find so fascinating that you're up to right now is getting into this world of voice acting. And again, I want to understand for you, what was kind of the driver for doing that?
It's something I've always been interested in. So I've been doing radio voiceovers for going on 12 years now. When I started in Springfield, Illinois, I happened to know a guy who was doing the nighttime on the country station. So we worked at the same time slot, but different stations. We were right next to each other. And he got me actually in with a couple producers around the Midwest that like do radio spots. And so I was making extra money doing that. And then, over the years, I got onto a few more producers, lists, and I'm still working with them to this day. So I have very long-standing relationships with them, which is awesome. But I don't know. I just kind of always wanted to do more with it. I just didn't know how. So what I originally did was I reached out to some radio people that were like in LA and like in the big markets, like top 3 markets that were doing voiceover. And I just kind of messaged them like, hey, how did you get into it? Like, I'm just curious. I don't really know how to do it. And it was interesting because the feedback I got was not positive. And one of the people in particular told me that you should never tell voiceover people that you're in radio because they hate radio people. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, but that's all I am. So I didn't do anything about it. And I just gave up hope. And this was when I was in Vegas. So this was a few years ago. So I moved here. I still had this vision in my mind of wanting to do voiceover at some point, and it wasn't until my incredible boyfriend Isaac.
Shout out to Isaac.
He is amazing.
Yes.
He's a local artist, the best boyfriend on the planet, and he convinced me to just start looking into it. So I started Googling, I started finding things, and then I started taking coaching classes. And it was terrifying. It was so scary. I was so out of my element. I had no idea what I was doing. I thought all the radio voiceover work that I had been doing for 12 years was going to just get me jobs instantly, and I wouldn't have to learn anything new. And I was so wrong. Like, they're like, no, that would be great for radio, but not for TV or like online. So I had so much to learn. But it was him motivating me and pushing me and being like, you can do this. Just invest in it. That I was like, you're right. And here I am now. I've only been auditioning for like 5 months. I'm doing really well in the voiceover. Like, I'm very excited about how well it's going, but you're not seeing all the behind the scenes coaching that I've done for like a year and a half of just straight coaching, just taking it in, drinking it in, learning everything I can. So it's been a hard transition.
Wow. Again, high five, Isaac. I mean, without him, you may not have gone down this journey.
Absolutely.
Because, again, you talked about imposter syndrome, right? And all these people telling you, maybe don't go down this path, especially because you're in radio, which is completely, obviously, bunk.
Yes, which is hilarious because I've actually met a lot of really, really well-known people in the voiceover industry who started in radio.
Really?
There are casting directors that started in radio. They love radio people.
Sure.
So I don't know if those people were just trying to get me not to join voiceover. I have no idea.
Sure.
But they did not give good advice at all. Like, it was terrible advice.
Sure. I think they might have been just trying to sabotage you because, A, you're really good and you're obviously going to be blowing them out of the water. But also, yeah, I think it's probably a competitive market.
Yes, definitely.
So,
hugely competitive.
Yes. But you've found some success already. You've been doing it for how long?
Auditioning since May.
Okay.
So what is that? 7 months maybe. But I started learning probably about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you started coaching. Okay. And for those who might be interested in top 3 things that really stood out to you from having a coach.
Ooh. Sometimes they can turn into mentors. Shout out to Jamie Sarah Lewis, my mentor. She's amazing. She does like a lot of character work. She's on Cartoon Network shows and stuff. She does commercial stuff. She's incredible. She was the main stripper in GTA. Like, she does such cool stuff. But like, seriously, sometimes those coaches can turn into mentors. And you need that, especially when you're starting out, because I would get a job and I'd be like, oh my God, how do I make an invoice? And I would like email her and she'd be like, here's a website, make a free invoice. This is what it's supposed to look like. Like, she would just walk me through everything. So when I did book jobs or have live sessions, she'd be like, this is what you need, make your studio look professional, blah, blah, blah. So if you can get a coach that especially turns into a mentor, that is amazing.
Okay.
Other things about coaching, it's really important because especially with commercial work, so, TV national commercials, you have to take other people's words and make them your own. And you would think that's easy to just be yourself, right? And then you're in front of a microphone and you have these words that are not words you would ever speak. And you have to make them sound natural.
Sure.
It is so hard to do. And even if you think you're doing it, you're probably not. So your coach is going to be honest with you about that. And they're going to teach you different ways that you can do that. Other things about coaching, they can teach you about the business aspect of it. So it's not just teaching you how to use your voice, but also how to market yourself, how to do a website, how to reach out to casting directors, all that kind of stuff. So coaching, you have to have it. And they even say, don't stop coaching. Like, this needs to be a continual thing. You need to keep staying on brand with everything because the industry's constantly changing and you need to know what's happening.
Sure. I like that. No, that's very good. I'm sure there's 100,000 of elements to coaching that would help you, but I wanted to understand just from your perspective a few of the, I guess maybe some of the highlights. And I think, you mentioned it in that it's not just the voice work, right? Which is very important. And would you say, but the voice work has been the lion's share of the coaching in just, understanding, I guess maybe like breath control, or are you are you doing more editing on the back end? Like, are you going in and fixing things and cutting out the filler words? I presume you're probably not using any filler words when you're actually recording.
I don't typically, no, but some people do. I tend to be pretty anal about it. Like when I'll record something, and even if I don't like just one chunk of it, I'll delete the entire thing and start over.
Just re-record.
And other people would probably say that's crazy. Like, that wastes time. Don't do that. Especially if you're on pay-to-play sites like I am. You have to get your audition in like that.
Okay.
People are auditioning like crazy. And if you're like the 50th person to audition, sometimes they don't even listen to your audition because they find somebody they like within the first 10.
Yes.
So you can't really waste time. But I am like a pro editor thanks to radio. Thank you.
Yes.
So I kind of just do it really quickly, and when I feel good about an audition, then I'll send it in. But it is usually pretty quick. So yeah.
Interesting. Now, from an audition perspective, are you giving them, or are they providing you with the entire scope of what they want recorded?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Sometimes they give you 0 specs, which are like warm and friendly, or we're looking for a younger voice that's fun and upbeat. Other times they give you nothing. They literally give you nothing. But you just kind of have to look up the company and maybe kind of see what their vibe is and just guess what you think that they would want. You can also give multiple takes. Usually they say give 2 takes.
Okay.
When it comes to pay-to-plays, it's hard because you do have to get your auditions in so fast. But typically, give one that's what they're looking for, and then give one that's maybe a little crazy or maybe a little warm or softer. Play with the getting closer to the mic or getting louder. It's like so many different things that you can play with during these auditions, which is really fun. But it's interesting because in voiceover, they'll say you'll audition 500 times and get 1 job after those 500.
Wow.
So it's very competitive.
Sure. And that's
Very
true.
competitive.
You have thrown out tons of auditions, and it's like a 500 to 1 maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's insane.
That's a lot of work.
It is. I
do
do at least 40 auditions a day.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'll book a few jobs a week, which is great.
That's good.
But, it's still a lot of work that goes into it.
That's amazing. With the voiceover, and I called it voice acting, and there may be synonymous terms, but
it depends. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, voice actors typically are like character work,
Yes,
that kind of
yes.
stuff. But it doesn't even have to be character. It could be like being a mom in a script. That's
Yes.
considered voice acting.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm technically a voice actor, but also do voiceover.
You do both.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And I wanted to ask then, do you do character work, or have you done character work?
I haven't. I have characters in my head. It's just getting confident, I think, with developing them. That
Yes.
takes a lot of time. And you have to be comfortable with that character. My biggest dream, and one of the main reasons I wanted to get into voiceover, funny enough, was because I always wanted to be a voice in a video game. That has been my I don't care if I'm a character that has 1 line. If I have a line in a video game, my dream is made. Like, I've been gaming since I was a child.
Yes.
So if I could be in a video game, that would be awesome, which might mean that I would have to start learning character work. It's not on my plan right now, but definitely down the line, I want to get into that. I think that would be really fun.
It sounds like, and it seems like promotional work, and I'm just calling it promotional work.
Sure.
I don't know if that's the right term for it, but where you're just doing advertising segments,
Corporate
and stuff
business stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, all that kind of thing.
Those are probably more prevalent, consistent than character work, though?
Agreed.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And you'll definitely get paid way more with commercial.
Interesting.
When it comes to like corporate narration, which is something that I also do, you can get paid good money for that, but those are the most consistent. That's where most of the work is. Commercial's very competitive, so you might not book as many. So when you're in voiceover, you don't just want to put all your eggs in one basket. You want to have multiple genres you can do, so that's the money you're making on the side, and then you'll get the big jobs when they come.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. And any tips for anybody wanting to get into voiceover, voice acting?
Yeah. One of the main things, you don't need a demo right away.
Okay.
Demos are like $2,000.
Wow.
Yeah, you don't, especially if you have 0 experience with any kind of like radio or speaking on a microphone or anything, do not do a demo right away.
Okay.
You can audition on pay-to-play sites without a demo.
Okay.
So you can just audition and get better that way. I would say be careful with the people that you're coaching with. There are plenty of people out there that are just looking for money, and they might not give you the best coaching experience.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I would highly recommend doing a consulting type of call with them before you choose to coach with them. And typically they'll offer that. So it'll be like a 15 or 30-minute free consultation call so they can kind of get to know you and what your goals are, and you can ask them questions and get to know them and see if there's somebody you want to work with. So do your research on that.
Okay. I like that. That's good advice. I'm sure there's people out there who are certainly interested, trying to figure out, like you did, the best path forward. And you also mentioned, right, getting a coach. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly, I think, a mentor, very, very important in any aspect of your life, whether it's trying to pursue upskilling in your business, or, trying to venture into a new, area, into a new career. So I love that you're up to this, though. That's amazing because obviously you've already found some success, and I can't wish you enough success. I hope you get that video game gig.
Oh, me too.
We're going to celebrate and definitely going to play it. I hope. I mean, I know that they've already started to work on and planning to release GTA 6, but keep an eye on that because I would love to have you.
Yeah, it's been, 10 years? Come on.
Oh, my God.
When's that going to happen?
Seriously. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the fun side of Izzy. You're an amazing person when it comes to just your drive and your passion towards the things that you want to do for your job. But, how do you relax? Like, what do you like to do?
It's funny because kind of everything that I do is like work. Like currently I am in a course for somatic therapy. No,
I have no idea what that is.
So somatic therapy, somatics, so psychology is, I believe it's in reference to the brain, the mind. Mm-hmm. Somatics is in reference to the body. So there's a lot of like trauma and stuff that's stuck in your body, whether you went through a major traumatic experience or maybe something really small. That energy gets stored in your body, and you can go and talk to a therapist all you want about it, but it's still going to trigger you because that energy's still in there. So somatics is basically, it's kind of like meditation in a really interesting way.
Okay.
It's getting in tune, being in the present moment, and listening to your body. And when you have a certain thought in your brain, so maybe it's an anxious thought that comes up like, oh, I can't do this, like I'm really bad at this or whatever. You focus on the body and where that thought is coming up in the body. And you can visualize it, or you can feel an emotion that goes along with it, or your body might go into a posture that feels like that thing. And just really feeling it fully to help release it. And then you have these like emotional releases that are just insane. So it's basically healing yourself from the inside out. So I know I'm taking courses for it, so it's like technically like work, but I love it so much, and it's something I'm so passionate about. So I do a lot of that. I do rollerblading, so my boyfriend Isaac and I will go rollerblading. We're going to be building some ramps so that we can learn some cool tricks.
Oh, you're not just cruising around the sidewalks.
We're trying to get like
extreme.
Yes, X Games level over here. So a lot of that, hanging out with the dogs. We like to go camping. We're very outdoorsy people, going kayaking, so we do that stuff whenever we can. But that's kind of what I do outside of my job.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned video games. You're a big video game fan, so I do want to ask you, what game are you playing right now?
We are restarting Zelda Breath of the Wild.
What a great game.
Yeah, we finished the first time. It was great, but now we want to try the second time and do all the side quests. We wanted to play it differently the second time than we did the first.
Oh, so you kind of just blew through the main story the first time?
Yeah, we were just like doing towers and shrines and just trying to get to the end, but I didn't really realize how many things we were missing by not talking to like all of the villagers. Like they could give you like weapons or something that could really come in handy later on that we didn't have. We really did not play the game well the first time. We struggled a lot. We had to look up at YouTube a lot to figure out how to get through things. So yeah, the second time we're going to do it a lot better.
Okay. And then the second question, in your mind or in your opinion, greatest video game you've ever played?
Oh my God. Probably Halo 2.
Oh.
Halo 2 or Halo 3. They're both up there for me.
The Halo titles, okay.
I grew up playing Halo. Like I still have Master Chief like dolls around my house and like an energy sword that I made out of Legos. Like I am such a huge Halo fan. That's what I was always known for. But then 343 took over, and I just cannot stand Infinite. I hate Infinite. And I know I played Halo 5. I know that was 343. It was fine. I still loved the multiplayer aspect. I still had all of my friends on there that I would play with. But yeah, I can't stomach it anymore. 343 really did some major damage.
I would agree with you there. And,
Thank you.
And certainly Halo 2, Halo 3, the glory days of the Halo franchise.
100%. It'll never be the same.
Yes.
It can never be the same.
It is sad. I
Yeah.
played Infinite. It wasn't the same. And I wanted it to be. Of course, we all did, right? We wanted it to be nostalgic and in the same game that we used to play. And it's
And
just
couch co-op, man.
Yes,
like
yes,
that
yes.
was Halo.
That's what it made it. And
Oh.
not available.
Not available.
There is an online co-op availability, though, isn't there? I think
They do like multiplayer,
Yeah,
but I don't think
okay.
there's couch co-op.
Yeah, no.
They told us they would
yeah,
be putting that in
of
there,
course.
but
yeah, just to sell games.
they
but-
lied.
Very sad, but that's cool. Okay, Halo. All right, I absolutely 100% respect that. Okay,
Thank you.
good. Now, finally, I wanted to just talk about how you're giving back to the community because that's also something that is 100% legendary status, and you check that box as well. So you're working with helping fostering animals through the radio station, using your
Yeah.
platform to do that. So talk to us a little bit about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so Lost Our Home Pet Rescue is in Tempe, and for, I don't know, I guess the last 2.5 years, I've just been going in there and taking video of some of their adoptable animals. This was nothing that I'm getting paid for. This was nothing that the station was like, hey, you got to do this. It's just something I've always done at radio stations that I've worked at. I've always worked with the local animal shelters. When I was living in Fresno, I, at one point, had 20 animals in my house that were all rescues.
Wow.
Because out there, it's a huge stray problem. Also, a lot of dog fighting out there. So people would be giving their animals up for free online and people would take them as dog bait. So I would intervene and I would find animals on the streets or I would find them online that people were giving away for free. And I would take these animals in, I would train them, and then I would find them new homes or give them to a rescue that's a no-kill shelter that would maybe be able to do something better with the animal. Sometimes I just didn't have the skills to help them. Sometimes they were horribly abused and I loved them, but they needed real training that I couldn't give them.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, it was just one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Incredibly stressful. Don't get me wrong. Having 20 animals in the house at one time was a lot, but it was totally worth it. And now I have 3 of the dogs and 1 of the cats from that situation, and they are everything to me. So just, I've always loved animals my whole life, and I've always known that ever since I started in radio, I would want to do something on the radio with shelters. So I love getting these animals adopted, and just giving them a spotlight is so important to me. So it's something that I do every week, and I love it.
I think that's amazing that you have incorporated that into your ability to obviously connect with listeners, connect with people, using your platform for good, right? Which I think is amazing. And I'm sure other radio hosts out there are doing that as well.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
just the fact that that's something that's so near and dear to your heart, because yes, animals are amazing creatures.
Yeah,
and
they're so
I mean,
pure.
You said you have 3 pets?
I have 4. 3
4.
dogs and a cat. Yeah.
Okay.
And they're the best.
Oh
They're
my
literally
gosh.
the best.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, Izzy, thank you so much for just sharing with us even just a smidgen of your life and what you're up to, in your day-to-day. You're making a big impact on everybody's lives out there who are listening to you. Again, a big shout out to the radio station Alt AZ 93.3 here in Phoenix. Please go shout out, listen to Izzy, give her some airtime, playtime, and then additionally too the foster organization.
Yeah,
remind
Lost
us
Our
again.
Home.
Lost Our Home.
Yep.
Well, I'll put a link here on the video. But yes,
Thank
please
you.
go support. Donations are great.
Yes.
Obviously, if you would like to, foster an animal, also great. But yes,
Yes.
support Izzy and what she's doing. She's such a legend. I'm so happy you're here. Final question for you.
Yes.
What would you say makes a person legendary?
So I recently saw a video that really stuck with me. And one thing I forgot to mention when you asked me what I do outside of my job is I'm a climber. So I've been climbing for over 10 years. I saw a recent rock climbing video, and it's this famous female climber. And she said one of the things that makes us great is that we're terrified, but we still push through and do it. So like they'll be on a big wall outside and they'll be super scared because it's just 300 feet of sheer rock face below them and they could fall.
Yes.
And they're like, yeah, I'm terrified, which so am I when I'm that high up on a wall outside. But the difference about being legendary and not is that you still push through and do it. Because anybody can be scared and be like, yeah, I'm just not going to go there. But like even with my voiceover career, it took so much courage. I have to give myself so much credit for that. To be bad at something especially in my 30s, to just start over, to just start something new and be bad at it, to fail multiple times and be okay with that and keep going. I think that's what makes somebody legendary. So just don't give up. Don't give up. You got to keep going, because if you stop, it's never going to happen.
I can't agree with that enough. I mean, well said, Izzy.
Thank you.
Unbelievably well said. And yes, we're going to clip that too, because that's such a great nugget of information for everybody. But again, thank you so much for being on this podcast. You are such an inspiration to me, to people out there. So thank you. Keep using your voice for good. And thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been a Legends of Zegan podcast. Fantastic guest here, Izzy. Please check out her socials, go follow her, give her some support, and please tune in again. And everybody, don't forget, stay legendary. All right, bye, everybody.